Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin has reportedly died in a plane crash in Russia. Local reports say the private jet crashed in the Tver region north of Moscow. The aircraft, en route from Moscow to St Petersburg, was carrying 7 passengers and 3 crew, with Prigozhin on the passenger list. All 10 apparently died. Joining us now is Dasha Chernyshova, our Russian correspondent. Dasha, thanks very much for being with us, and good evening to you. All right, let's talk about what we're hearing about this crash. Obviously, the news coming in this evening. Talk to us about what you know at this stage.
Well, indeed, we have the confirmation that the plane with 10 passengers on board, 7 passengers and 3 crew members, has crashed between the Russian capital Moscow and St Petersburg, the second largest city of Russia, that was in Tver region. So we understand that Yevgeny Prigozhin was listed on the passenger list as one of the passengers on board. It is not immediately clear, though, whether Yevgeny Prigozhin has actually boarded that plane and whether he was there. Now, the pictures that we are receiving suggest that all the passengers and all the crew members have died as a result of this plane crash. The head of Russia's Tver region has taken the investigation under his personal supervision, and the Russian Investigative Committee has opened a criminal probe into the possible violations of the exploitation safety. So we understand the Russian authorities are now looking into what has happened to that plane. A special commission has been set up to investigate the technical state of this plane, as well as meteorological conditions, the pilot training, so all the issues that could be involved. And we understand that at this moment, all the versions of what could have happened are being considered. Now, they do involve the pilot error that could have been a technical problem or an external influence against this plane. But there, again, there's been no official confirmation whether Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board of that plane or not. But also, there are many questions whether his right hand, Dmitry Utkin, who was also playing a very prominent role in the Wagner mercenary group, was on board of that plane too, or not.
You know, it's interesting you talk about a criminal probe. There'd be a criminal probe if we suspect foul play. Where is this foul play suspected to have come from? And maybe I should just, put out my cards out there. People had suspected that due to what Prigozhin had done to Putin and seemed to have betrayed Putin, that, Putin wasn't going to take this lightly and that he wasn't going to let it go. So when you're talking about a criminal probe, in terms of what? Against who? For what?
Well, they are still investigating. They have opened this investigation, and this is an ongoing one. So certainly they will be looking into what has happened and what could have led to this plane crash, whether that was an error of the pilot, the technical state of the plane, or some other external influence. Now, of course, there are many questions as to what happened, because Yevgeny Prigozhin has grown indeed to eminence over the course of the past months, thanks to what he has been doing in Ukraine, and particularly the fight for Bakhmut, where his Wagner group was largely involved. And we also have heard a lot of criticism coming from Yevgeny Prigozhin against the Russian Ministry of Defense. Just keep in mind, Prigozhin has been criticizing the Ministry of Defense for months, and there's been no word from the Russian authorities, because, again, he was talking about the ammunition paucity, about the poor decision making, and then eventually he started his so-called march of justice towards the Russian capital, with tanks going from Rostov towards the suburbs of Moscow. So certainly there have been many questions whether Yevgeny Prigozhin was still allowed to do that. And after that, there has been an arrangement struck between the Kremlin and Yevgeny Prigozhin himself, and brokered by the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. And under that deal, Yevgeny Prigozhin was a free man.
Yeah, and you talk about the fact that there's no word from Russian authorities, but with regards to this plane crash, any word from the Russian government at all? Are we expecting any word from the Russian government?
Well, certainly not at the moment. The Russian president has been taking part at the festivities commemorating the victory of the USSR in the Kursk battle. And he has been talking about the deeds of the Russian soldiers and tying all those events to the ongoing military effort in Ukraine. So there's been no word from the Kremlin as to what has happened. But definitely the Russian officials now, many of the influencers, many of those who shape the public opinion are now talking about what has happened and what the possible possible versions could be. There is much speculation and many different reports. It's very hard to see whether they are truthful or not. So we're just yet to hear for the official confirmation from the Russian authorities.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think, that the Russian authorities would be swayed or concerned about what may come out of public? I mean, you talk about public opinion. Surely, and it already has started those rumors that would start to surface. It doesn't seem that Russia concerns itself too much about public opinion. But is there, a feeling that they might need to say something with regards to this?
Well, certainly the Russian authorities do understand what role Prigozhin was playing and what public opinion was having about his position. So certainly the Russian authorities have not really tried to intimidate Yevgeny Prigozhin's group. They have been trying to incorporate that into the Russian Ministry of Defense by offering them to sign contracts with MOD following this aborted mutiny by Prigozhin exactly 2 months ago. And Yevgeny Prigozhin was again a free man. He was seen in St Petersburg, he was seen in Belarus, he was seen in Moscow, he was later seen in somewhere in Africa. Yeah. So apparently that arrangement was a sort of way out for the Russian authorities. Now, of course, there are too many questions and the Russian people will be looking for the answers.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it as well, some people are already speculating that he might have wanted to fake his own death. I mean, you mentioned the fact that the Wagner boss had, even traveled out to Africa. So, I mean, yeah, I would assume that this criminal investigation is going to look at all possibilities.
That's right. There are different possibilities of what could have happened. But of course, there is the speculation that could have been a staged plane crash in which Yevgeny Prigozhin has been trying to find a way out. So there are many different versions of what could have been the reason behind that and what could have been the cause of what has happened.
All right. Thanks very much to you for joining us. That's a Russian correspondent there, Dasha Chernyshova, talking to us there from the Russian capital. Let's take a short break. More news coming up after this.